beneath the waves, tying back to Inarius' attack on the Firstborn and the disaster that followed. So by the time Mephisto's eclipse arrives, the game has already told us what an eclipse means in Skavos. They are not omens of renewal, they're omens of catastrophe. And when the eclipse finally hits, the Amazons who had already been touched by hatred are overwhelmed completely. Adriana did not to be controlled by magic at first. Mephisto simply found her fear for Skavos and pressed on it until it became hatred. That hatred spread through her army, and when the eclipse came, it absolutely consumed them. They became Mephisto's army, his flock and his playthings. And that is why stopping him at the pools matters so much, because we weren't just preventing a ritual, we were preventing the birth of a new kind of hatred-twisted humanity. Now, at the end of the campaign, we do stop Mephisto, but killing a prime evil has never really solved the problem. If Mephisto is destroyed normally, his essence eventually returns to the Hells and reforms. That has always been the problem with the prime evils. You can defeat them, you can imprison them, but permanently removing them from the board is almost impossible. So instead, we use Lilith's dagger, a weapon tied to her own essence, to send Mephisto somewhere else, the Void, which is an eternal prison. At least that's the hope here. But Diablo lore has already shown us that the Void is not necessarily permanent. Lilith herself was sent to the Void by Inarius using that same weapon twice, once after the purge at the dawn of humanity and again during the Sin War, and yet she returned. So while Mephisto may be gone for now, I would not treat this as the end of him forever. After all, this is the Diablo franchise. Prisons fail, Soulstones fail, and the Void may fail as well. But what is interesting is that Lord of Hatred does not end the same way the base campaign or Vessel of Hatred did. The base game ended with Neyrelle carrying Mephisto's Soulstone, Vessel of Hatred ending with Mephisto securing Akarat as his vessel, and both endings clearly scream this story continues. Lord of Hatred, however, is different. There is no obvious vessel cliffhanger, no soulstone being carried into the unknown, and no immediate next step for Mephisto. Instead, the story closes the book on the Age of Hatred. Neyrelle is gone, Lorath is gone, Mephisto is banished, and Tyrael is left to confront what all of this meant. That gives the ending a level of finality Diablo 4 has not really had before, which raises the big question, is this the end of Diablo 4's story? Maybe, but the game also gives us several clues that suggest the next threat has already been seeded. In the post-campaign questline, Legacy of the Sightless, we help Seer Atharpa repair the Sightless Eye with the aid of Lycander, an angel known in lore, but now finally shown in game, and this quest gives us one of the most direct prophecies in all of Lord of Hatred. Atharpa sees oceans boiling with hellfire, cities turn to bone, weeping, gnashing of teeth, and something waiting behind the veil. Then she screams terror. Humanity opens the gate to him. It's Diablo himself. This is massive because it directly names Diablo as returning to Sanctuary. But there is one complication. When we later ask Atharpa when this happens, she says this ruin will not come to pass in our lifetime, and that matters. It could mean Diablo is not coming in Diablo 4 at all, and that this vision points to a future game, maybe even Diablo 5. But I don't think that's the only possible read here. Prophecy in Diablo is rarely clean. Atharpa may be seeing a later return of Diablo, but not necessarily the next one. The prime evils return in cycles. Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal returned in the timeline of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. And then Diablo returned again with the essences of his brothers back in Diablo 3, with Mephisto returning in Diablo 4, which means Diablo and Baal are most likely already reformed or close to reforming in Hells. So this vision could be showing a future cycle of terror rather than the immediate next expansion. Now, speaking of prophecy, we have to talk about Tyrael and Lorath. Tyrael grants Lorath eternal rest by burning the Tree of Whispers, freeing him from the bargain that found him there. And this moment matters because Lord of Hatred is not just ending Mephisto's chapter, it is also bringing Tyrael's Herodrum full circle. Throughout the expansion, we revisit Herodric history. We enter a Herodric vault, we relive memories of the first Herodrum, and by the end, we lose the last of Tyrael's modern Herodrum, Neyrelle and Lorath. Tyrael's arc is also about mortality. He fled his Herodrum because as a mortal, he felt himself getting older, weaker, and afraid. He wanted to help while he still could, but by witnessing Lorath's end and by honoring him instead of clinging to him, Tyrael finally seems to accept what mortality means. Mortals die, but they are remembered. That is the peace that Tyrael finds. But before he burns down the Tree of Whispers, he says something dangerous. When speaking to the Wanderer about the prophecy, there is one line that says, "He who was bound in chains was set free." And Tyrael thinks it might refer to Lorath. Maybe Lorath was the one bound in chains, and by burning the tree, Tyrael set him free. This is a beautiful interpretation emotionally, but I really don't think this is the real one. And we need to be careful here, because Diablo 4 has already shown us how dangerous it is when people see themselves in prophecy. Inarius believed Rathba's prophecy referred to him. He believed the Spear of Light, piercing Hatred's heart, meant he would kill Lilith, earn forgiveness, and return to heaven. That belief led him to kill his own son and march the cathedral into hell. So when Tyrael starts interpreting the prophecy around Lorath, I think we're supposed to question it, because if that line does not refer to Lorath, then who was actually bound in chains? That is where the ending stops being a conclusion and starts becoming a setup. Another prophecy is found at Mount Carchius, which says, "As Hatred's sun set, that of terror and destruction dawned." That is one of the most important lines in the expansion, because it directly implies that once Mephisto's Age of Hatred ends, the next ages belong to terror and destruction, Diablo and Baal. The question is, which comes first? And the strongest evidence points to Baal, because across Diablo 4, we've seen a repeated line tied to the prime evils. Hatred begets destruction, as destruction begets terror, as terror begets hatred. This appeared in previous item flavor text, including items tied directly to the prime evils and hatred, appearing in the base campaign and Vessel of Hatred. But Lord of Hatred reinforces it again through the Warlock unique Age of Madness, which repeats the same cycle. Terror begets hate, hate begets destruction, destruction begets terror. That is now multiple times across multiple points in Diablo 4's life cycle that the game has repeated the same order. Hatred leads to destruction, destruction leads to terror, terror leads back to hatred. That does not feel like coincidence. If Mephisto's age has ended and hatred begets destruction, the next major prime evil to rise should be Baal. And that makes the bound in chains line very interesting. Maybe while Mephisto was active in Sanctuary, one of the other prime evils was restrained in hell. Maybe Baal or Diablo were chained, either by Mephisto's influence, by rival demonic forces, or by the aftermath of previous conflict. And while Mephisto is banished, his power fades, and someone else is set free. That would make Tyrael's interpretation emotionally meaningful, but prophetically wrong. Lorath may have been freed from the tree, but the prophecy may be warning us that something far worse was freed at the same time. If I had to guess right now, I think Baal is the cleaner next step. I've discussed this before in a previous video, and Lord of Hatred really just reaffirms it. Hatred into destruction, Mephisto into Baal, for the third time. And Baal has a lot of room to return in a way that feels very distinct from Mephisto. Mephisto's story was manipulation, faith, corruption, and turning belief into hatred. Baal is destruction, which means war, collapse, shattered kingdoms, broken lands, and a more direct assault on Sanctuary's foundations. It would also allow Diablo 4 to escalate without immediately using Diablo himself, because once Diablo returns, that is the biggest part. So narratively, it may make sense to let Baal rise first and use Diablo as a shadow waiting behind everything. Now, there is another Oracle vision that I think is easy to overlook. Dear Olindra, found on the island of Philios, describes a vision. "I saw a camp of companions gathered at the edge of the world. Each bore a different face, yet one purpose threaded through them. Upon their few shoulders rested the burden of all mankind. I wish them well, whoever they will be." That sounds very clearly like the classic Diablo 2 character select campfire. A group of different heroes gathered together, each with a different face, carrying the burden of mankind. You could argue that she's seeing the past, maybe the heroes of Diablo 2 near Ariat, the edge of the world. But the final line changes it. She said, "whoever they will be." That suggests she is seeing future heroes, a future party, a future crisis. And that supports the idea that even if Lord of Hatred closes the Age of Hatred, the story of Sanctuary is not over. There will be another group. Another optimistic piece about the future of Diablo 4 is that Lord of Hatred updates the world map in a way that feels very intentional. We now have a clearer look at the Western continent and another island nation that has never been fully explored in the main games, Shansai. That does not guarantee that Shansai is next, but it is worth paying attention to. Skobos expanded the playable world in a major way, and the map now makes future travel feel more possible. Kingsport also appears geographically close to Skobos, which could create a natural route back towards Honduras or other western regions. If Bale is next, there are multiple directions Blizzard could take. They could move towards areas tied to destruction, old conflicts, or the aftermath of the Primeavals, such as Area Crater. They could also use Shansai as a fresh setting, or they could return us towards more familiar Diablo territory through Honduras, but my gut tells me that Tristram will be saved for Diablo's return. The important part is that Lord of Hatred does not leave the world feeling closed. It leaves it feeling expanded. I think Lord of Hatred absolutely feels like the end of Diablo 4's first major saga. The Age of Hatred is over, Mephisto's plan failed, Neyrelle and Lorath's stories are complete, and Tyrael has found peace with immortality. The Haradrim chapter has come full circle. That is real finality. But finality doesn't always mean the end of the game, it simply means the end of this era, and the evidence points towards something else beginning. Rothos' prophecy says that after Hatred's sun sets, terror and destruction dawn. The repeated primeval cycle points from hatred to destruction. The Warlock Unique reinforces that same order again. The Lycander quest directly names Diablo as a future threat. The Oracle Vision shows future companions carrying mankind's burden, and the map continues to open new paths across Sanctuary. So my current read is this: Lord of Hatred ends Diablo 4's Age of Hatred, but it may also begin the road towards the Age of Destruction. If that's true, Baal will be next, and Diablo may be waiting. So the eternal conflict is very far from being over. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you believe Baal is being set up as the next major threat? Or do you think Blizzard is saving this for Diablo 5? Regardless, we will find something out at BlizzCon, which the Diablo team teased us with during the 30th anniversary spotlight. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love Diablo lore and want full Lord of Hatred coverage, including gameplay systems, make sure to subscribe. I'm also live 5 days a week on Twitch, exploring the new expansion, hunting for secrets, and pushing endgame on my Warlock. Come hang out, say hi, and join the Burger Club. Thank you all for watching. A special thanks to all of my supporters. Until next time.
In Diablo 1, we were able to play as the Rogue, the Warrior, and the Sorcerer. However, whatever happened to these three heroes after they defeated Diablo in the depths of the Tristram Cathedral? Unfortunately, the world of Diablo and Sanctuary has always been nihilistic, bleak, and hopeless. That means not even our three original heroes were spared from Sanctuary's wrath. In this video, we're going to talk about each of the playable characters from Diablo 1 and their fates following the conclusion of the first game. Let's jump right in. First off, we are going to talk about the Rogue, Morena. So Morena was actually a sister of the Sightless Eye, which is a rogue order that was based out of the Eastgate Monastery, which is a stone's throw away from Tristram. Upon hearing reports of strange evil emanating from the monastery of Tristram, Morena, who was a captain of the rogue order, went to Tristram to investigate this occurrence. Once there, she proceeded into the depths of the monastery alongside two companions she met there, our sorcerer, Jazrath, as well as our warrior, Prince Aiden of Honduras. Those three together defeated multiple significant horrors in the cathedral, to include the Butcher, the Skeleton King Leoric, who came out to be Aiden's father, and then of course, the Lord of Terror, Diablo himself. Upon Diablo's defeat, Morena returns to the Eastgate Monastery to be among her rogue order. Now, when she arrived, the priestess who led that order, Akara, who you recognize from Diablo 2, noticed something strange about Morena. She felt something was wrong with her and feared that she may have brought an evil back with her after what she saw at Tristram. At the time, Akara more or less figured it may have been trauma and took no action. Unfortunately, she was right. A dark force did return with Morena, and this evil influence that she brought back with her finally showed its face when Andariel attacks the Eastgate Monastery. To Akara and her rogue order's shock, Morena turned her bow against her sister and sided with Andariel, taking up the mantle of Bloodraven. At some point, it isn't clear if Morena perished, but she does come back as an undead and begins resurrecting her dead sisters to fight against the living Sisters of the Sightless Eye. Sadly enough, in Diablo 2, Kasia, who was Morena's best friend in childhood, along with Charcy, gave the charge to Diablo 2's heroes to take her down. So the once mighty rogue captain and hero of Tristram perished to the evil that she encountered within. Next up, what happened to Jazreth, the Vizdarai sorcerer who accompanied Morena in Diablo 1? Unfortunately, his story follows a similar trend. So